So, a different topic.
A different topic. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, John.
I am really glad to be here. I've had kind of a weird day at work, and I'm having a beer. Actually, I'm on my second beer, and I'm just happy to be here and having a conversation with you.
I am happy not to be reading a white paper about virtualization of a DCS.
Yeah. I don't even want you to tell me about it, I'll be honest.
It's probably just as boring as it sounds, even though I have a phenomenal interest in virtualization.
Right.
This white paper was probably the driest thing I've ever read on the topic.
Well, if just to kind of talk on that for a second, for anyone who's listening to this that isn't in IT and kind of wants to be, you should go talk to someone who has an IT job and find out what their day-to-day life is like. When I was a kid, I started learning how to program when I was 12 or 13 years old. And it was on my mind that I wanted to be a programmer. I wanted to make video games. And then that evolved to, I wanted to be in IT. And when Mike and I worked together at a company that had a really great IT department, we had a lot of friends that worked there. And so both of us really wanted to be in IT, and we were similarly skilled in that way. And it could have very well been that either one of us could have ended up in IT, if not both of us. And I didn't make it into IT at that particular company, but I am in IT now. That's what I do. And I've been doing it now for over a decade. And, it is not at all what I expected it to be or what I even wanted it to be. It's so different. And, you're talking about having to read a virtualization white paper. That sounds interesting to me. But when you get a bad one, it's super dry. It's awful. It's a terrible experience. And at least for me, I'm kind of on the engineering space, on the software side. I end up with these things where I don't really have the opportunity to read white paper, because white papers generally mean research. And so I am not an R&D. It is my job is super boring. And it's not what you expect it to be. You think programming to me always felt, this is going to sound ridiculous, but programming to me has always felt like, whenever I learned something new, like I was uncovering some kind of mystery of the universe. And it's the same way I felt in physics in college, that, learning about it doesn't matter. Learning about anything in physics made me feel like I was peeling back the layers of the universe, and that the more I knew, the closer I was to the universe, And programming always felt like magic. It literally, to me, it felt like magic. Like I was doing magic and learning some universal thing, like some truth about the universe through it. And that magic has been destroyed by the corporate machine. I mean, utterly destroyed. Has been taken from me violently, and it's awful. And so what I want people to understand, like you want to program somewhere, that's great. Everyone should learn how to program. It's a great mental exercise, but
absolutely.
But make sure that before you go and you spend $50,000 or more on a college education, and then put yourself on this path to a career, make sure that you talk to someone who's doing the job you think you want, spend time with them, learn what they're doing, try to do some of it yourself, because and not just the fun parts. Make sure they talk to you about the things like submitting change requests and having to document your TDLC stuff and following SDLC processes. That stuff, I'm not even kidding you. I spend more time in a day filling out paperwork for a change I want to go into our production environment than I do a lot of times actually doing the work. And if somebody wants to add, this sounds so boring, right? But if somebody wants to add an option to a dropdown, that takes me 4 seconds. I can do that in literally in less than a minute. 4 seconds is an exaggeration. I could do that in less than a minute. It takes 45 minutes to do the documentation to get that thing into production. So
I'm on the system side. So it's more hardware, networking, some user interface. I have a very broad spectrum job. I do some software configuration, but I don't actually create software.
Right.
And so I get into things like platform management for servers, desktop deployments, helping users figure out software and just stuff that, that's where I beat my head against the wall most of the time is.
Yeah.
And that's where the largest paperwork burden, if I keep on top of ticketing, again, like you have a change that takes you less than a minute, I can hop onto a user's computer and help them figure out something in Outlook in a
Right.
minute or two.
Yeah.
But if I'm on top of my ticketing, I've got to open up a call and
Right.
document everything that happens, and it takes longer to document than to actually do the work.
Right.
But a big difference, and I think one of the things that may drive your dissatisfaction with the job is in the environment I'm in, and this and as much as surprised as you were to be bored by your job, I went into an industrial setting with IT, and I didn't think I was going to stay, and I didn't think it was going to be fulfilling because where I work, we make paper. And when you think of a paper mill, you don't think of high technology or vast IT infrastructure. And right up until the first day I started as a contractor, not even directly hired on, that's what I was thinking is I'm going to hate working out there, but I need money. And I got out
Right.
there, and industrial systems, I mean, you have automation going in there and on an industrial scale, and automation interfaces with IT infrastructure. And so somebody has to be able to configure those devices, and all those devices are different. And it's everything you do is so industry specific that half the things you do aren't you don't have somebody in a forum that you can necessarily give you the exact steps on how you do it.
Right.
So half the time you're trying to figure out how to do it, and you have to research, and you have to learn things to apply into this one situation that you might
Right.
only touch once or twice a year.
Well-
So every time you touch it, you have to relearn it too,
Yeah. And
which sounds frustrating, but it's really interesting.
yeah, and two, I think something that a lot of people don't realize when you're first learning, at least in the programming side, when you're first learning how to program in whatever language on whatever platform, you spend an enormous amount of time looking stuff up on the internet, and that doesn't stop. And so kind of that doesn't
Google
stop.
is my best friend.
Yeah, Google
Yeah.
Google is your best friend. Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow, those places are great resources if you can get around the trolls. YouTube is a great resource for all of that stuff. But my point though is that at some point, like those resources never stop being huge resources for you. What happens is your problems get so nuanced that you can't find solutions for them anymore. Like you already know the solution to all of the non-nuanced problems because you've been there. You've done it already. You've asked the same question 15 times on the internet, and you've finally remembered the answer to that question, and now you don't ask it anymore. Now you have weird problems that you can't even put into words somewhere. And all you can say is you could go to some forum somewhere and just be like, it's broken. I don't know why. Someone please help. And like, that's about as far as it gets. Once you've got that level of experience, you still use those resources, but they're almost useless because you can't articulate what the problem you're having is. It's funny how that works out.
So we were talking offline about working with developers or the people that interface with developers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really interesting is when you communicate directly with peers of your like industry or an adjacent industry, but the people that do a similar job to you or a supporting job to yours that are highly professional, and you get to interface with them on a level much deeper than, customer support, where the customer support people think you're the average user and you've already tried to do all of the same things that are in the troubleshooting manual because heck, you probably wrote the troubleshooting manual. But that's really, while we do like talking about technical
it's not an IT
things,
podcast.
Yeah. And I'm sure occasionally we will bring IT subjects and news into discussion.
Yeah.
Today's topic
15
is
minutes
totally not related to IT. But we do like our tangents, don't we, John?
Oh yeah. That's why the name of the podcast is what it is.
That's right. So a different topic.
/merch.
Yeah, different. Probably. Well, no, don't go to a differenttopic.com just yet.
Yeah,
it's there. Don't go to it.
Down. You need to go take that down.
Yeah, I'll try and remember to do that sometime in the next year.
Yeah.
So, but the first topic we've got is something I play a lot of YouTube in the background while I'm doing things at work, at home, anytime when I don't want to necessarily watch something, but I hate to just be in silence. So YouTube gets put on a lot.
Amen.
And
brother.
I've got a lot of learning channels, news channels, things like that. And one of the things that came up, and I'm sure we're going to post a source to this in the doobly-doo. One of the things that came up was a story from, I believe, SciShow, where it was talking about crayfish that is taking over certain areas of Europe. And it was interesting how they're doing it, because apparently one crayfish got a genetic mutation where instead of getting 2 pairs of DNA, it got 3. Its mother contributed both strands of DNA as well as the one strand from its father.
Yeah.
And instead of being horribly mutated, unable to reproduce, this particular combination of DNA allowed it to asexually reproduce. And which asexual reproduction isn't completely uncommon in nature. I wouldn't say that it's really common, but I also wouldn't classify it as uncommon.
Yeah, it's definitely not uncommon. I wouldn't call it common either, unless you're talking about like a specific group of animals. You know what I mean?
Or single-celled organism, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
in the overall biome that we have, it's definitely not common, but it's not super
especially
rare
the more complex an animal it gets, the less likely it is to asexually reproduce, largely for genetic diversity, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that interested me about this crayfish thing. It's asexually reproducing, and the children are perfect genetic clones from the parent.
That's it. Yeah, it's not just that it's asexually reproducing, it's making clones of itself. And
How
since
cool is that?
crayfish, yeah, it's and normally when you see asexual reproduction, it's either like cell division or it's very minimally very minimal production. You don't get 20, 30, 40, 50 offspring from one individual.
Right.
But in the case of this crayfish, you do.
Yeah.
So it's able to take over an ecosystem off of one crayfish because one has 50 eggs and then there's 50 more that each have 50 eggs, and you talk about exponential growth.
Yeah.
And they're able to reproduce so quickly after they're born.
Well,
so
not only that, but this particular the species, or can we call it? I'm bad with my kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. This branch of crayfish doesn't have to hunt for a mate, though. That's not only do they not only do they become able to reproduce early, they don't have to hunt a mate. So there's no,
it's instant. It just adds to the exponential factor, and it's not just one clutch of 50 eggs. It's clutch after clutch after clutch. So it's like through its adult reproducing lifespan, it will have several clutches, and so that's hundreds and hundreds of crayfish off of one.
Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds of identical crayfish.
Oh yeah. of the exact same crayfish.
Right.
So there's countries that are having to ban the sale of this crayfish because it'll take over aquariums, it'll take over, and it's been released into the wild too. So there's
that's what cracked me up.
And
they cracked me up because they I need to rewatch the video and look up the story. But what I'm to understand is that somebody left for a weekend, just one crayfish in this tank, and then when they came back, it was just packed full of crayfish. And
that's how they found out about it.
Yeah, well, so what happened was this person's tank is overrun with crayfish, so he just dumped them in the ocean. So now he's got these asexual reproducing perfect clone copy crayfish just out in the wild, and now they're showing up all over the world.
Well, and people got a hold of some samples of these and started letting them reproduce and selling them as like pet food, pets.
Yeah.
People are eating them directly. I mean, so there's a couple of things about this. One is, first, it's just amazing that this genetic mutation resulted in this perfect storm that is just actually kind of scary because it could take over an ecosystem and totally drain it of resources before it will affect the population of these to where it reduces them. And then it's just a matter of, does it mutate again to where it reduces the reproduction rate so it doesn't damage its ecosystem?
Right.
There's enough ecosystems it's in that will that change depending upon what ecosystem we're talking about that it's dominating? Will we see other population growths of creatures eating these because they're
the more plentiful food source?
Yeah. Well, and when we see other population growths,
we're going to see a mutation where they can double their clutch output in a lifetime.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That we've got the invasion of not the body snatchers, but the crayfish. It wasn't an alien invasion. It's just a mutated.
Yeah.
It's a mutated shrimp. But another thing that I was thinking about was, well, some people are breeding these and turning around and like using them as food.
Mm-hmm.
it almost seems, now granted, you would have to support it with an environment and therefore food and resources to support the growth of this, but it's like, is this like, have we found a partial solution to world hunger?
I mean, maybe if you can breed them fast enough.
I mean, there's possibilities good and bad with this, but it's an
Yeah, for sure.
amazing topic.
Yeah, very cool.
So of course I had to talk to you about it. So
it is very
crayfish.
cool, for sure.
Just they're gonna take over the world from the water.
Right.
Our oceans. Just we're done with them. They're the crayfish oceans now. Well, we're gonna have to conserve water for showers because the crayfish, the crayfish own the water now.
Right.
Speaking of showers, it's time for our shower thought.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. So let's resist the urge to sing right now, and let's start thinking about the universe could have been created 5 minutes ago with the molecules in our brain arranged in such a way so they would contain our memory. So,
right.
Did we just pop into existence? If anybody's listening to this, did we even ever exist? Did you just come into existence in the middle of the podcast and we didn't even record this podcast? It's just it just popped into existence with you, with us.
Yeah. I love this topic. So, I first was introduced to this idea when talking about space and travel at the speed of light, or superluminal speeds. So because we started talking about this because we're talking about
superluminal speeds.
The superluminal, yeah.
Is that the official terminology for faster than light travel?
Superluminal, yes.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, it was like everything else is subluminal. Yeah. Anyway, so we're talking about traveling at faster than light speeds, and all those kinds of things. This kind of stuff comes up, right? You start talking about like how old the universe is, and somebody, I don't remember who or even what the setting was, but somebody brought up the fact that, or brought this very thing up, that there's no way for us to know that the universe didn't snap into existence 1 second ago with all of the experiences of our lives kind of imprinted in our brains. And so immediately somebody in that group made the argument, well, like, no, because we can see light from stars that are coming, that, the light's coming to us from thousands or hundreds of thousands or billions of light years away. And so my immediate response to that was, well, I mean, if we were snapped into existence this instant with all of these experiences imprinted on our brains, then it stands to reason that the light would have also been faked. That, that there is no way for us to know really that we weren't just created this instant and having all of these experiences, including the light that seems to be coming from very far distant bodies. And I find that very, very cool.
Yeah, that's a very the thought of that, the argument that whoever had about the light from distant stars, that I'll give them credit. That's a very salient point, but
wrong.
Yeah, if everything was just snapped into existence, then that includes the idea that the velocity of every particle is immediately started from whatever point existence started. And if that were the case, there's no way that we would know when existence started.
Right.
Did it start now? Did it start from the time that whoever's listening to this heard the words? I mean, there's no way to know.
And what
And
I think is neat about that, we don't really need to care about that. It's fun to think about, but when thinking about the origin of the universe, we don't care about that because our experience is the only thing we can test. So we can just say like, well, it looks like the light from this star has traveled 400 million years to get here. So we assume that its position as where we can see it is 400 million years or 400 million light years away, so on and so forth. That is the nature of the universe we live in, full stop. We don't care. We may care, but we can't test the hypothesis that the universe was just created. So we just have to pretend that it was not just created and that all of those experiences have actually happened.
okay, so tangential shift here because I had a thought pop into my head and I can't ignore it.
Okay.
You mentioned the age of light, and it got me thinking. Right now, we don't really capture particles intact, like light particles, photons intact. We can measure them. We see their impact on a measurement device, but we don't actually, you know, manipulate a single photon, right?
That's not entirely true. No, I'm not aware of any kind of any experiments where we've been able to freeze a photon, but we've gotten pretty damn close. There was a
Close
paper.
is not doing it though.
Well, no, but I mean, when you talk about a photon that normally travels at 186,000 miles per second, and you're able to slow it down to 38 miles per hour, that's pretty significant.
That is significant. I'm not going to say that we haven't gotten close, and I may be ignorant to a study where they have manipulated a photon or groups of photons far more than I'm aware of. I'm not all knowing, and I'm not going to ever claim to be all knowing.
Yeah, there have been some really fascinating slow light experiments. You should look them up.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that, and that'll definitely end up being something in our source material in another show. But my thought is, do you think if we ever get to the point where we can actually examine a photon or maybe even a group of photons to the point that we can see the microscopic world through electron microscopes and see nanoscale differences and even manipulate single atoms on a nanoscale? If we get to that point, do you think we'll be able to see properties of individual photons that may give us origin?
Ooh, I see.
So like,
yes,
we can tell it traveled 60 billion light years before we were able to capture it, that it was created in a star in a far off galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you get to that level of detail, there's no telling the kind of stuff we might be able to see. There's nothing in my knowledge about particle physics that implies that some information like that may exist. That being said, though, just fairly recently, in the last couple of months, I saw an article that the CERN experiment at the Large Hadron Collider believes the scientists there believe that they may have found a particle that does not fit in the existing standard model.
Ooh, do tell.
And I don't know anything else about it, and I haven't heard anything else either. That all I saw was they had a weird blip at a weird energy level that they weren't expecting, and they can't explain it in any way other than they found a new particle. Now, the speculation that I did see from some scientists at the Large Hadron Collider made the comment that if it's true that a particle exists at this particular energy level, we need to completely rewrite the standard model. That it means that we don't understand the universe like we thought we did. And I think that's really cool. But
that is exceptionally cool.
Yeah. So the reason I bring that up is you're talking about the opportunity of something like extremely slow light experiment where you're able to capture a photon and inspect it. Like I said earlier, like peel the layers back of it from it. And, maybe we see some kind of piece of information that we didn't expect particles to carry. And maybe we can, start talking about something or start reading a photon like it has some kind of information and data in it.
I'm imagining DNA of a photon, but it would. I don't imagine it would be DNA, but it carries some information.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not DNA in the same sense that we have, because it's not biological material, but it could very well be that it's something akin to strings from string theory,
right?
Because what they say is that strings are what make up particles. So what I was going to say though is we don't currently have a way of peeling back the layers from a photon, but we do have a way of essentially shattering particles into myriad other particles. And that tells us a great deal. And that's what these particle colliders are doing. We take, I say we, like I'm obviously not one of these people, but they take a particular particle
as
that
a human race. We're adding to the knowledge of the. Yeah.
We take these whatever particle we want to smash, and we smash it against whatever other particle we want to smash it against, and then we have these detectors that try to detect all manner of other things that come out of that collision. And these collisions on the quantum scale are extremely high energy, but they're meaningless in front of you. They're I don't know the numbers, but you could snap your fingers and create more energy in a room than these colliders are doing, to my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me down in the comments. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what's interesting, what the point I'm trying to make is that those particles, when they annihilate, they become other particles. And so those particles tell us things about the particles that collided. So it's a similar idea to what you're talking about. We're not able to take tweezers and a scalpel to a photon, but we can smash the shit out of it and have it emit a bunch of other stuff. And those things.
But smashing the shit out of it is brute force.
Yeah.
One day we may be able to take a scalpel to it and not a hammer.
Yeah. And dial back the brute force to sweet seduction.
Yeah. So I'd love for that to happen within our lifetimes, and we learn more about the universe.
Mm-hmm.
But one question I have, and I know you don't know much about the study and the results. I'm hoping you can answer this question though. Was the result reproducible that they found, or was it a one thing?
No, they reproduced it. So the experiments over there, they don't release almost any details until they have checked, rechecked, and then disbelieved and checked again, and then written someone and woken someone up and then brought them back in and redone the experiment and still disbelieved it. Like they don't tell us.
That is so cool then.
They don't do it. They're real scientists. Believe it or not, the people that work at the Large Hadron Collider are actual scientists.
I don't doubt that. And I'm not saying that they would just willy-nilly go, oh, we found a thing. It totally wasn't the mustard that we let drop on the mirror that we were using to split this thing. But when somebody makes a find like that and gets excited, sometimes some things may get overlooked in an excitement.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I didn't see the paper, so I had to ask the question.
Yeah, no, it was
but that's
yeah, it was the very delicate experiment that, as the way I remember it was, maybe I'm wrong, but the people at CERN don't tend to release any information to the public that they didn't vet over and over and over and over and over. We're talking about very delicate science that is, extremely important. They tend to take it very, very, very seriously.
Well, that is super cool. And I think that's a good point to kind of wind down now.
All right, fine. I don't want to talk about free will.
About what?
I don't want to talk about free will and its connection to particle physics and the nature of the universe. It's fine. It's fine, Mike.
I tell you what, get a source and it'll be a different topic.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I guess in that case, since Mike doesn't want to have any more stimulating conversation, I guess we'll call it. Guys, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.